As an emergency operator, I received a call from a young girl who sounded scared and unsure of herself. She told me that she had never left her house before and that she was finally able to escape from what she called a prison house. It was clear that she was the one who had made the brave decision to leave and that she was now seeking help. She went on to explain that she had taken an old cell phone with her, which was her only means of communication. I could sense her anxiety and fear through the phone, but I remained calm and tried to reassure her that help was on the way. As she spoke, I couldn't help but think of Jordan Turpin and the horrific ordeal she had gone through. Jordan had managed to escape from a house of horrors where she and her siblings had been kept captive for years. It was a story that was hard to believe, but unfortunately, all too real. I knew that the girl on the other end of the line was in a similar situation, and I couldn't imagine the courage it must have taken for her to make the decision to leave. I promised her that we would do everything we could to help her and that she would soon be safe. As the call ended, I couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration for the young girl's bravery. She had taken a step into the unknown, not knowing what lay ahead, but she had done it anyway. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of situations, there is always hope, and there are always people willing to help. Jordan was overwhelmed with fear as she made her first call, unsure of what to do. Time was running out, and she had to act quickly before her parents found her missing. With trembling hands, she poured out everything to the operator, desperate for help. The operator swiftly connected Jordan to the sheriff's department, but the situation only got worse. When asked for her address, Jordan had no idea what it was. She frantically searched for any sign that could help locate her, while the dispatcher sent a police car to trace the location of her phone. As Jordan waited in terror, the operator stayed on the line, offering her support and guidance. Finally, Jordan found a scrap of paper with an address scrawled on it. She read it out to the dispatcher, who relayed it to the police. The reality of Jordan's situation was far worse than anyone had imagined. When asked if any of her siblings needed medical attention, Jordan revealed the horrifying truth about her home life. Her family lived in squalor, surrounded by filth and neglect. The children rarely bathed, and the air was thick with the stench of decay. The dispatcher could hardly believe what she was hearing, but she remained calm and professional, ensuring that Jordan knew she was not alone. The dispatcher knew that time was of the essence, and every minute that passed was precious. She reassured Jordan that help was on the way, and that the police would be there soon to rescue her and her siblings from their nightmare. The thought of the filth and neglect that surrounded Jordan and her siblings was overwhelming. It was impossible to imagine the discomfort and pain they experienced every day from the itching and stickiness of their skin. Not to mention the serious health problems that could arise from never taking a shower. It was torture, just one of many tortures they endured. Jordan bravely confided in the operator about her father's possible possession of a gun and her mother's apparent disregard for her siblings. She waited anxiously for the deputy to arrive, knowing that her life and the lives of her siblings were on the line. When the deputy finally arrived, Jordan was terrified. She had never spoken to a stranger before and didn't know what to expect. The deputy's tall, imposing figure only added to her fear. Nevertheless, she took a deep breath and began to tell him her story. She explained how she had escaped from her home and why her younger sisters were chained to the bed. Her mother had claimed it was because they stole her food, but Jordan knew that was no excuse. She apologized for talking too much, but it was difficult for her to open up to someone she had never met before. Despite her fear and trauma, Jordan had found the courage to seek help and start a new life. She had escaped from the horrors of her home, but her journey to healing had just begun. The officer was already exhausted from his graveyard shift at the cemetery, dealing with a shooting and a night full of violence. When he received the call about the runaway girl, he expected it to be a routine case of taking her home and resolving things with her parents. but it quickly became clear that it was much more serious. I called because my 2 younger sisters, they're in chains right now. Do you have any pictures? Yes, I can show you. I didn't really have any, but one of my sisters told me I had to take pictures. Do you have pictures of your sisters in chains? Yes, they're here. Jordan showed him the pictures of her sisters who were chained to the bed. Not only were they emaciated, but they also appeared pale and depressed. Upon seeing this, Deputy Anthony Coles called for backup. He asked Jordan to get into the police car, and on the way to the Turpin's house, he asked her about the worst thing her parents had ever done to her. Jordan was soon to discover that the outside world was much kinder than the one she had known all her life. Although she and her siblings would receive love, support, and care, it would take a long time for them to come to terms with what had happened to them. Several police cars pulled up in front of the Turpin house at 7:23 a.m. An officer asked Jordan if her 2 sisters would still be confined to their beds, and she remembered that her brother was also chained up for 2 weeks. Jordan explained that if her parents had not yet realized that she was missing, then her siblings would still be restrained, but if they had, they would try to make it look like everything was normal to cover up the situation and punish her according to their twisted standards. The officers knocked on the Turpin's door for more than 2 minutes before it was finally opened by the parents. The officers explained that they had received a call to check on the condition of the house and asked if there were children inside. The parents responded affirmatively and allowed the officers to enter. Without delay, the officers went inside as they knew that there were people in the house whose lives were in danger. There they discovered 12 emaciated individuals, too weak to even celebrate their rescue. The oldest child, Jennifer, was 29 years old and weighed approximately 37 pounds, while the youngest, an 11-year-old, had the arm circumference of a 4-month-old baby. The Turpin house was more reminiscent of a prison than a home, a truly horrifying sight. Several years before the Turpin family was discovered, their behavior began to raise concerns. In Texas, they were known for strange practices, such as dressing identically and performing elaborate, coordinated dances in public. But it wasn't until they moved to California that the situation became truly dire. The Turpins' homeschooling drew attention from the authorities, who noticed that the children were not receiving a proper education. But when they visited the home, they found it tidy and the children well behaved, so they closed the case. It wasn't until one of the siblings escaped and called the police that the full extent of the horrors was revealed. The Turpins had managed to keep their abuse hidden for years, and it was only through the bravery of one of their children that they were finally exposed. Now, with the couple facing a lifetime in prison, the Turpin children are left to try to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives and move forward. But the scars of their childhood will likely never fully heal. Surprisingly, the Turpins were once a couple in love. David Allen Turpin was a shy and nerdy boy born on October 17, 1961, who had a passion for computer science. After graduating from Virginia Tech, he worked at Lockheed Martin before moving on to another company. Louise, on the other hand, was almost 7 years younger than him and even quieter. She was born on May 24, 1968, and was involved in the Bible Club at school. The two first met when Louise was in high school in Princeton, Virginia. They fell in love at first sight and were soon married in a small ceremony at a Pentecostal church. However, the Turpins justified all their actions through the church, at least initially. They were devout Christians who believed that they had to be married to have intercourse, and that God wanted them to have many children. This is how they ended up having 10 daughters and 3 sons. In 1990, the couple relocated to a tranquil residential neighborhood in Fort Worth, Texas, 5 years after tying the knot. At that time, they already had a daughter named Jennifer. However, Louise, Jennifer's mother, was a mercurial and erratic parent. As they welcomed more children, the once sizable home turned into a filthy and unhygienic dwelling, which the Turpins refused to let anyone visit. they shunned their neighbors and relatives, opting to avoid them at all costs. Jennifer's eldest daughter was enrolled in school, but her unkempt appearance raised concerns among her teachers. Regrettably, Jennifer emitted a pungent odor that repelled other children. It is plausible that the teachers brought up the issue with Jennifer's parents because, in 3rd grade, they withdrew her from school, preventing all their offspring from receiving an education and depriving them of exposure to the outside world. In 1999, the Turpins relocated to Rio West, Texas, a more remote area than their previous residence. At the time, they had 4 children, but over the years, 8 additional children were born in Rio West. However, the only evidence of their existence was through family photos taken during Christmas and sent to relatives. Conditions at home continued to deteriorate, with the Turpins resorting to physical violence, such as beatings and strangulation as punishment for mundane tasks like eating or taking a shower. They enforced respect by invoking the biblical concept of honoring one's parents and justified their reprehensible actions using religious scripture. Initially, the children were thrown down the stairs or thrashed with belts and sticks. Subsequently, David, the father, constructed makeshift cages, and Jennifer, the oldest child, was tasked with locking up her siblings when their parents demanded it. Were you aware that in numerous instances, serial killers or rapists tend to escalate in their crimes over time? As they become increasingly self-assured and perceive themselves as invincible, they start to push boundaries and unleash their most repugnant inclinations. In 2007, the Turpins perpetrated their most heinous act to date. They relocated their 10 children to an isolated trailer located on their property, with David and Louise only intending to live with their 2 youngest children. The other 10 were left to fend for themselves, denied the opportunity to venture outside, and only provided with sporadic groceries, if at all. As a result, they subsisted on leaves and grass and dwelled in squalor amidst piles of garbage, leading to several health issues. Despite this harrowing situation, David and Louise chose to renew their wedding vows at a chapel in Las Vegas. David and Louise were avid Disneyland enthusiasts, so when David secured a higher-paying job, they relocated to Perris, California in 2010. As a testament to their devotion, David purchased a license plate for their old car that read David and Louise Forever, or Disneyland Forever. Despite their lovely exterior, their home was hiding a sinister reality. Louise had accumulated an enormous amount of credit card debt, as evidenced by her statements at the time of her arrest. Despite purchasing countless toys and colorful items, Louise forbade her children from touching them, claiming they belonged to her mother. They acquired numerous costly clothing and toy items, some of which were never used. In fact, they amassed around 100 different collectible Monopoly sets and similar items, displaying a worrying tendency towards excessive materialism. During the 2010s, David declared bankruptcy, and the family was reduced to consuming fast food and frozen meals, while the children were limited to a daily ration of bread and peanut butter. As they settled in California, the children began to yearn for escape. Some of the older siblings possessed smartphones, which they used to communicate with their parents and explore the outside world. When Jordan was 14, she stumbled upon Justin Bieber's music videos, which depicted clean and beautiful homes filled with friends. She created a social media account where she uploaded videos of herself singing in the bathroom whenever her parents were away. However, her repeated presence in the same location prompted someone to contact her, inquiring about her situation. Jordan responded by revealing the horror of her parents' mistreatment. In 2015, Louise caught Jordan watching a Justin Bieber music video and subjected her to a brutal beating that left her almost dead. As a result, Jordan struggled to sleep for several months. By then, she had come to the realization that she needed to escape and rescue her siblings. As you are already aware, the Turpins' shocking story came to light during their trial, where 2 of their sons testified against them. David and Louise were ultimately convicted and given life sentences with the possibility of parole after 25 years. Today, the Turpin children are making progress, although it didn't happen overnight. Regrettably, the minors had to switch foster families in 2022 after allegations emerged that the previous foster family had sexually abused some of them. The majority of the adult Turpin children are presently in college, employed, and living in their own apartments. They still have the rest of their lives to recover and create the life they desire.